Hello and welcome back to HID Productions. I am here again for part 13 with Mark Sabrion, and we have been talking updates in regards to the Restored Church of God. We last left off talking about just more the general updates of more dates that he predicted that didn't happen, showed a few videos.
Death threats.
Video we saw was his death threat.
Veiled death threats. He knows some names. Don, I tell you, I would give anything to know what names are on David C. Pack's mind that God is going to kill on April 8th. So I'm sorry, I had a bit interrupting.
So now we're going to roll into, which I find pretty interesting, as a church organization that has had a lot of funds. We're talking millions of dollars coming in from members. They own a lot of properties that members live in. The property is beautiful, but there have been some cutbacks and major changes, which foretells there's issues going on.
Yes, the Restored Church of God is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It's a church that has the same type of tax shelters that all churches have. They have a campus in Wadsworth, Ohio. They have homes along Route 261, Akron Road, and Hartman Road, which they rent to their headquarters staff members. They have ministers and lay members living in these homes paying rent to help cover the mortgage. So the campus is a big financial burden for them every month. They have lawns, they have lakes, they have a lot of upkeep that needs to happen. They have, lights everywhere. So there's a lot of expenses. They have horses and a barn. They have a lot of expenses. And so Restored Church of God, since it has not been growing, David C. Pack will describe it as flat growth, but flat growth is just decline in denial. So they are not growing as an organization. The people in Restored Church of God, most of them have already paid their what's known as common. In the book of Acts, all brethren gave as they had. They were able to help build the church, and David C. Pack has turned that into a cash machine where he tells people they will not get salvation unless they give him money. Sell your extra house, sell your extra car, take out a bank loan, go into debt, give us the money, they need it. And when people aren't doing that, or the people that are there have already given the money, and you can't get blood out of a tomato or blood out of a turnip. I'm not sure which the phrase is, but you know what I mean. So people, they don't have it. And so what they really need is new money coming in from the outside. They need somebody who has financial substance, who's willing to write a check for a few $100,000, $500,000, which some have done in the past. That must not be happening anymore, because starting in the summer, which I think is what you're referring to, during the ministerial conference in June, David C. Pack announced during the ministerial conference that there were going to be transfers because of financial issues. And they laid off 2 ministers and their wives. David C. Pack's wife apparently went off salary, and he was, quote, going to give up his secretary and let her go somewhere else. And this was all cost-cutting measures. And I wrote an article about blood. It's called Blood in the Water. That's not a good sign. That's not an organization that's doing well. And this is after they sold one of the homes on Hartman Road to help buy a house on 261, the $500,000 eyesore. So those poor financial decisions are hurting RCG. And so they announced the layoffs in the summer. And then those ministerial, we'll call them layoffs, but he called them a field transfer, sending men into the field for his Christian speak of, we're laying you off and sending you away. And so 2 couples were sent away as a cost-cutting measure.
Where were they being, quote unquote, sent to?
I don't remember the exact locations. I think one was supposed to go into Kansas, and the other one I'm not sure. But the point is, they're being sent away as a cost-cutting measure, and clearly the Restored Church of God must be having some kind of financial problems if they want to take 4 people off salary.
My question is these ministers, were they just expendable? Do they have any meaning in the church, or they just got rid of them?
It's funny you say expendable, because everyone in the Restored Church of God, except for David C. Pack, is expendable. Now, I would argue that the most important person in the Restored Church of God is actually Bradford Schleifer. He's the one running the show. He's the guy doing the day-to-day operations. He coordinates with the field ministry. And in some ways, he has more power than David C. Pack does, who I see more of a figurehead. Brad just lets Dave go up and, babble his prophetic nonsense and just keep him happy, keep him out of my office, keep him, out of the day-to-day business. And Dave has let Brad run the show. But so, yeah, those men are all expendable, you could say, or you think you're not expendable until you find out great news. We're sending you into the field, which basically means we're firing you, we're laying you off. Now, the thing about the layoffs is those men would probably got a stipend that the Restored Church of God would pay some field ministers about, I've heard numbers around $15,000 a year, not enough to live off, but it's definitely helpful. So they're reducing salaries by a significant amount. Whether those men got stipend or not, I actually don't know. So that was one cost-cutting measure. Another cost-cutting measure, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are they still with the church? Or
We're
did
jumping
they
ahead, but the short answer is one of those couples left in January. So a minister and his wife who were laid off from the Restored Church of God left, I believe, after the feast around October, November of this year, moved away from Wadsworth, and then in January resigned from the Restored Church of God. I know that couple. I don't believe it was a financial, oh, we got fired, so we're leaving. I think, and he and I have been in connection. We're going to talk very soon off the record. But I believe that if I talk to him, it's going to be a doctrinal based decision. It's not oh, I'm not getting enough money now. It's I didn't believe Dave, and this was a good way to get out the door because he already let us go.
So did these two ministers, did they put a lot of time of years into the church?
I want to say, well, there's one couple that left, and I believe they were in the Restored Church of God for about 6 years. The bigger issue with them is they gave their common, and we're talking close to $500,000, if not over $500,000 to the Restored Church of God.
Wow.
I'm not naming the people when they leave. I don't name them because I've named men in articles. So their names, if you comb through my website, you'll find the names of people who leave, ministers who leave. But I don't feel like outing them after they leave because they're trying to begin their healing journey. They took the step. They had the courage to say, we're leaving, and they left. So I feel like I'd be throwing stones at them as they're walking away. And I want to facilitate and encourage all ministers to resign from the Restored Church of God. It's a spiritually corrupt organization. David C. Pack is, from all reports, a toxic human being. Being around him causes stress, difficulty. Some people suffer from forms of PTSD, and that's no joke, because of the horrific conditions of the way that the Restored Church of God is conducted. All around David C. Pack, controlled by David C. Pack, but then he has enforcers around him perpetuating this toxic atmosphere. So when a man and his wife say, we're done and we're gone, I applaud them. I'll give them hugs and say, let's have a beer and talk about it. Not because, hey, you came to my side of the fence. It's just that they took a stand and finally admitted what they already knew. So that's kind of a long answer to a short question. So one of the other financial changes was around third tithe. Could you, Don Blue, I'm just curious, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you know, if I said tithing and third tithe, what that is?
Okay, so I know that the third tithe, doesn't that go towards their feast?
That's the second one. You're close. It's the one that Jessica Brown had applied for to get financial assistance.
Okay.
It's the I'm sorry, I didn't.
There's 3 of them.
Yeah, they're hard to keep track, especially when you don't do them. For people who don't know, the first tithe is the tithe to God, 10% of your income off the top. Second tithe is a personal savings account that you use to go to the Feast of Tabernacles. So it's basically a personal savings account with an asterisk. And then the third tithe, what used to be every 3 years, you give another 10% for the widow, the stranger, the Levite, and the orphan, according to the Old Testament. It's a financial support system for people in the church. And Jessica Brown had talked about how she'd applied for a third tithe loan which she intended to pay back, and she was denied. And since her interview went out, I heard from multiple people saying, I tried to do that. I tried to do that. I tried to do that. I got sent the forms that people have to fill out to get third tithe assistance. So RCG wants your money. Your salvation depends on common, but when the brethren are in need, oh, well, you know, and they make them jump through a lot of hoops. And so one of the big changes is, and I knew this was a desperate move for Restored Church of God, is David C. Pack found in the Bible a way to get out of the 1 year of release. So it was supposed to be every 3 years with a year of release. So every 4 years, you pay a tithe once. He got rid of the year of release, said it wasn't part of the scripture that talked about third tithe, it was something else, and that you just continually pay it every 3 years. No year of release. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh man, they must be hurting for money. They're laying off ministers, and now they're messing with third tithe. So it's just and then David C. Pack also said you should pay it every month along with your first tithe, which that is not biblical. You're supposed to save it until the end of 3 years and then pay it, which is how I did it. So there's some interesting, it's funny how God's revelation benefits the church financially just when they need it. It's always amazing, Don, when that kind of thing just lines up.
So he stopped eventually paying the entire field ministry.
Yes, that was the bigger, and that headline I believe is still on my website, where, and I had heard from inside sources that David C. Pack had been wanting to do this for a long, long time. He has been wanting to not pay the field ministers. One field minister in particular was a full-time, full salaried minister. A lot of field ministers who can't afford to only work and be a minister were given the stipend, which is around $15,000. And so the Restored Church of God, mainly the men on the third floor, and I know in particular one man, Brad Schleifer, called them. They called each man directly in the field and said, you're going off salary. And you're going on,
Wasn't this a big rumor first, and everybody's like, that's not true?
Well, it was a rumor that it was going to happen. But then it did happen. And it was kind of announced during the ministerial conference and probably during one of the more private sessions that was never released to the lay members, which, you know, I only get access to stuff that lay members have. So that was announced that cuts were coming. It wasn't as vague, but one man did tell me he had heard that the stipends might stop at some point, but the men were given almost no notice. They got a phone call in December and said, first they were told, according to my sources, 2 different sources, first they were told over the phone, oh, as of January 1st, we're going to stop paying. And then a couple days go by and there's a follow-up email and a follow-up phone call. Oh, we just stopped it. So they stopped it in mid-December rather than January for, quote, tax reasons. So you're working for the Restored Church of God. You're a field minister. You're barely making ends meet. And then you're told that a significant portion of your income is going away. And by the way, this paycheck is your last paycheck. Thank you for your service and continue to work hard. Don't be less productive, Don Blue, on no money. What do you think of that?
That's sad, because most of them have families. They still have bills. The economy, everything has gone up. I mean, it's sad. It's real sad.
Everything's gone up, and you know, the campus is still sitting there sucking money dry from the Restored Church of God because the world to come hasn't been done in 7 years. There's no big financial influx of people who are tithe payers. They're not growing. They're barely getting by. And so this is another desperate measure by the Restored Church of God. And I've told you in interviews, I check the Zillow website every week. I'm waiting for them to sell another home, because once they start selling other homes around the campus, that is the iceberg hitting the Titanic. It just might be pick, 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 but the ship is going to sink. Now, the conversely to that is they can survive. They can, you know, let's say start eating their own arms. Biblically speaking, they can live off eating their own arm, but how many arms and how many legs can you eat until you can't survive anymore? And that'll be the question. But that's probably going to be the next step. So The ministers were told, we're letting you go. That didn't go over well with some of them. But did you have any questions before I move on to one specific man?
No, I was going to ask, wasn't somebody fired in December?
So, I only named him Mr. Vadal Wachuku, who's a wonderful human being. His daughter worked at headquarters with me for many years. He has family members that were in the church, and now, as far as I know, his entire family minus one is now out of RCG. They all left. So what happened was Mr. Wachuku had an altercation with Brad Schleifer on the phone, where Brad was so mad, Brad hung up on him, which I was tickled, but I thought that was hilarious. Like I could see Brad Schleifer being so mad in his office on the third floor. That makes me laugh. And knowing Mr. Wachuku, who's from Nigeria, he's a very loud, boisterous man. He's very jolly. I mean, when I was at headquarters, I was on a hugging basis with him. I would see him. Oh, Mr. Wachuku, it's so good to see you. We would hug him, and he was just a sweet man, a very good speaker, eloquent, smiley, loud, happy. Well, when the phone call came to let him know he was going off stipend, he was asking questions versus just, sir, yes, sir, thank you, and
You
I'm
don't ask
happy.
questions.
He asked questions, and apparently Mr. Wachuku has had targets on his back for a long time, because over the years he's had a reputation. I've heard this from other ministers since. He was not a rollover man. He was not a headquarters said to do this and I'm going to do it without question. He would ask questions. You know, Don Blue, the Bible principle is we're supposed to prove all things and hold fast that which is good. And I experienced this when I was in the Restored Church of God. I was told to do things that I knew were wrong, and I pushed back to ministers and said, that doesn't feel right, or that seems wrong. And I would get in trouble because I was pushing back or asked questions and like, oh, you're stubborn, you're rebellious. You know, not all these men said that, but that's the stigma. You're rebellious and stubborn, you're self-willed if you don't just roll over. And now I know with Mr. Wachuku, who is a nice, wonderful man, he's very intelligent. He was an attorney in Nigeria before he came to the United States. His wife, too. They were both in the legal system, both attorneys. He would ask questions. Well, why are we doing this? Or what principle is behind that? Or why is this and why is that? And then they would come back and change their tune. He would get an email. Now, I want to say that the article I wrote about him, he did not contribute. Mr. Wachuku did not talk to me about the situation. I heard it from people around him. So I want to make for the record, he did not give me information. I heard information from other people, and I trust sources. So he just asked questions and then was fired because of his rebellious, stubborn attitude. And I probably wouldn't have I wouldn't have said anything, but he just so happened the week he got fired, Don, because he got laid off from the ministry, he needed to find work. He immediately got into an insurance business that his wife was already working at. And so he was getting into insurance, and he and I connected because he was looking for clients. And so I was talking to him, not as a former member of the Restored Church of God. In fact, our first hour, we didn't really even talk about RCG. It was mentioned, but we didn't discuss it. It was all business. And it was like, oh, sir, it's so good to see you. And he's like, yes, Mark, remember how great it was? We had a great interaction. And then a couple of days later, I found out he got fired. And I thought, man, that is so dumb of them. Because he told me, when I did bring up RCG, he said he could never see himself just leaving the Restored Church of God. He was going to stay there. It was God's church. He had proven it. He was a Worldwide Church of God member, and he was going to stick with it. And then they fired him. The one guy who wasn't going to quit because he asked questions, he got fired. And then I thought, okay. And then the kicker for me was that Jocko Vilhune, who is the church administration, he's the headquarters congregation pastor in Wadsworth, wrote a letter to the members explaining the departure, the firing, the letting go of Mr. Vadel Wachuku. And I wrote an article called Character Assassination. The article assassinated his character, said, you think you know this man and you don't. He has a history of rebellion. We've tried to work with him a long time. He's very angry. He's very blah, 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 blah. And because he's Nigerian, when he gets excited, he gets loud. And I could see where somebody might think, oh, he's angry, but he's just being loud and excitable because Nigerian people are very passionate.
They couldn't
And
just
so,
write a basic letter. They really had to sabotage. His family goes there. I mean,
right. Well, it was a hit piece as far as I'm concerned, character assassination. And so I wrote about it. I wrote his name. I defended him. I printed the letter. I gave commentary, and I thought it was very interesting that everything in that letter actually applies to David C. Pack, and Dennis Deal and Kevin Denis were inspired by that letter, and they also contributed to the website and wrote 2 articles about that very thing. Dennis took the angle of, we are disfellowshipping David C. Pack instead of Mr. Wachuku. And then Kevin Denis wrote a parable about 2 men from South Africa, because Jocko Viljoen is from Africa, who came into Restored around the same time that Mr. Vidal Wachuku came into Restored. And so you had 2 men from Africa, one condemning the other and, basically, criticizing him or painting him in a bad light. And I couldn't let that stand. And so he's one of the rare exceptions of people that I actually named, but I named in his defense. And you had mentioned something, and I wanted to hit on that. They couldn't just write a regular letter. You said they wrote it, like, why couldn't they write a regular letter? Mr. Vidal-Wachuku is probably one of the most beloved ministers that was in the Restored Church of God. His congregation loves him. He usually had some of the biggest congregations in the Restored Church of God. He was the pastor. He's a very loving man, very caring man. I had people coming out of the woodwork. I can't believe they said this. I can't believe they did this. He's such a nice man. So, and I do know that at least one couple followed him out the door. When they found out he resigned, or when he was fired, they left too. Maybe others did, I don't know. But that was the fear I think headquarters had, which is why they had to go on the offensive,
I
because
see.
they knew how, and they were concerned about how beloved they were. Over the years, he had later told me they had concerns. Other people told me, yeah, people were always worried about Vidal because his congregation likes him too much. They love him too much. He's too friendly with them.
Now, does that have anything to do with the ministers that resigned that January?
I don't know what their relations are, if they talk to each other, if one was a catalyst for another. But after the after the stipend went away, 2 ministers resigned. The ones we talked about earlier, the couple, I don't believe they left for financial reasons. But the other gentleman who left, the financial part had an influence in that decision, because they gave their common. They were in financial problems. They still have financial problems right now, all because they gave their common. They did sell all. And I think that there was already a wearing down, and this was kind of the last straw. So everything behind the scenes, that's not my story to tell. I'm hoping that all comes out, that the individuals involved directly tell their story, how it happened. But I did get a lot of information that I haven't released publicly about that. And I know that couple too. And he's the minister. He's a great guy. He's a great guy. I served with him at headquarters. They gave up a lot. And then to add insult to injury, David C. Pack then went on a basic 5-minute rant, tearing the man apart on a sermon, calling him a thief and a liar, which I don't know if we have
You've gotten
time.
several exit letters since we last talked.
Yes.
And guest contributors.
Yes. So I've had 5 guest contributors and 3 exit letters from former Restored Church of God members. The thing about the website is that now the SEO, search engine optimization, now sees EXRCG as a legitimate news source. I started a couple weeks ago playing around with Microsoft Start that uses Copilot AI. And I would ask it a question about, is David C. Pack a false prophet? And my articles come up now. Like, is David C. Pack an apostle? Is David C. Pack, when you now search on the internet, David C. Pack, the EXRCG website comes up. Some of my articles do. And one of the funnier responses, that it doesn't do it every time, but if people at home ask Copilot, is David C. Pack a false prophet, and you spell it correctly, one of the results came up about his personality being a result because of his potty training with his children. potty training when he was a child. Now, I wrote that article as a parody, but it came up in the results. I was crying laughing when I saw that. I sent it to my buddy Peter and I said, hey, Pete, go look at this. This is hilarious. And the AI did say, you know, in a tongue-in-cheek response, it is known that it was thought that David C. Pack is the way he is because of his parents' potty training.
Now,
So
I will say that I have looked, just for viewers to understand, there are different AI search engines, and some will pull up one thing while another will not. Chat GPT did not. And it's,
right.
I would say there are prompts to change it, but in general, if you're just looking, it's a lot more conservative. So there are search engines out there with the AI to pull up things for you. It's a lot more conservative, or you have to put a specific prompt in. So
Right.
for Microsoft and a couple others to do it means that it's definitely coming along, because it's not just you on that site. You've had contributors for exit letters and yes, so
right.
now I can see why. And it's extremely popular because, and it's not due to me, it's due to your content, Jessica, and everybody else. The Restored Church of God series on WCTV for HID Productions has won several times the most views for a series. So I think it's not because that it's like, you know, this huge showstopper. I think it's because of the information that's in there and the education that it gives to those who are not in the church and those who are in the church. It's a very I don't see anything else out there like it. And I think it can pertain to other churches alike in the Cox, that if people are having issues, they can kind of relate. So for the website to do as well as it has, I can see why the search engines, but just to reiterate, you have cut back some because you've had some changes.
Yes. So when we last spoke, I was still full-time working on the EXRCG website. And so I would live this 7 days a week, and other people are like, oh, I'm concerned about you. Don't you want to get a life? And it's like, yeah, but for right now, this is kind of what I'm called to do. I felt like I was called to do this. And since then, I've gotten a job, started back in last week of May, first week of June. So I've been working. And I've had to pull back on the amount of times I can report per week and hours I can devote to articles. So if people notice the slowdown, it's because life gets in the way, which when I started the website, I never said I was going to do this for 10 years. I was going to do it for as long as it was useful. It's still useful. And I've been able to find a work-life EXRCG balance in a way where I can still manage my life and still find time to point out the madness that David C. Pack does. And I just write once or twice a week now. This week I actually skipped only because he's now preaching things that are kind of tied together. And sometimes I like to let 2 or 3 or 4 sermons roll together so then I can tell a bigger story. So I have slowed down. So it's interesting that the search engines, like you can even just Google, just type in normal Google, not even AI, and EXRCG comes up. And the reason that is because not just its consistency, its volume, but also it's putting the same phrases over and over and over and over again. And people will read my articles and go, wow, he's saying this, David C. Pack, Pastor General, the Restored Church of God, blah, blah, blah. Why does he keep doing that? It's for the search engines. And popularity and success, I don't gauge it by number of views, Don. I don't have subscribers. I'm not looking for thousands of people to come to the website every day. It's the 1 or 2 or 3 people that are out in the world who are thinking about joining the Restored Church of God. Now when they Google it, now when they use Bing, now when they use Start, that my website comes up. And I have a growing list of people that never joined the Restored Church of God and now won't because they found my information. And that's the one thing that they don't calculate at headquarters about the EXRCG's effectiveness on, causing, let's say, just say causing harm to the Restored Church of God. They can't see the impact because there's an unseen element. The people that order literature or read the website who are thinking about joining find my YouTube channel, find my website, whoa, 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 what's going on here? And then I get emails where people have questions. Hey, can I talk to you? Hey, I have specific questions. Hey, what's this? Those are now the people that I consider the target audience. Yes, to help members come out, to know that they're not crazy, they're not wrong, they don't want to run out and sin, they don't, not because they're impatient, like, oh, this is just taking too long, they're not feeling that way. It's for them. But I've noticed a shift in the amount of current members who write me has dropped, because I think most people who are going to leave by now, probably, except for a few, have left. But it's more people who are like, oh, I found you on YouTube. Oh, I found your website. Oh, I was looking into them. Oh, I was going to contact a minister. I've gotten on the phone with people. I've had Zoom with people. I've had emails with people. Before they walk in the door of the Restored Church of God, I give them the information. I don't try to talk them out of it. I'm very straightforward. I'll say, look, I'm not a spiritual advisor. If you're trying to find God's true church, then ask God where you should go. But the EXRCG website is all about providing information, accurate information, direct quotes. This is what he said in this sermon. He's Elijah. He's that prophet. He is the messenger of the covenant sometimes. He is the branch. He is blah, 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 blah. These are the dates he set for the return of Jesus Christ. When people have that information, they can make an informed decision about whether or not to continue in Restored Church of God. And I had some people even say, yeah, I'm not sure. I said, hey, contact them, ask them questions, do whatever you want to do. But I'll tell you I'll tell you, this is what's going to happen. If you say this is what they're going to say. If you say that, this is what they're say. And one guy wrote me back and said, Mark, you nailed it. Everything you said that they were going to respond to is exactly what they did. And I knew, I got to back away. So to me, that's gold, Don. If I can keep one person away from the Restored Church of God, I consider the website a success, except I know it's a lot more than just one.
Now we got about 7 minutes left. I have 2 questions for you.
Yes, I will try to.
One of them is with the YouTube and the stuff that you do. Are you worried about legal action?
The Restored Church of God is not necessarily a litigious organization. When the website first started, I got some copyright strikes for releasing some of the quotes on YouTube initially. And then after I fought it because I was using it legally under fair rights usage, they stopped doing that because I was going to keep pushing back. If they wanted to keep pushing it, I was going to keep pushing back. So they didn't. What I say and do is not, there is no defamation and libel. It has to have certain parameters. First of all, it has to be false. I don't report what's false. It has to be malicious or with an intent to harm. I'm not intending to harm anybody. I don't go after David C. Pack personally. I have many, many personal stories that I keep my mouth shut on because I always said I'm not going to attack personally. And it has to be, I'm sorry, I lost the third point. It has to be false. Oh, it has to damage their character. It has to damage their reputation for their character. And the problem is David C. Pack already has a horrific reputation of character. I can't possibly damage it more than he does to himself when he just opens his mouth and talks. He is his own worst enemy. And all I do is take his videos, put them out there and hey, listen to the man. Don't listen to Mark Sabrian. Listen to him. Listen to what he says. His words are more powerful at warning people to stay away from the Restored Church of God. So I'm not worried.
Another question is you, which was, I think, amazing that somebody took the time. Frank Kelly did a compilation of videos and stuff.
Yeah, so Frank Kelly, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, just because so I can show the website. Frank Kelly is a former member of the Restored Church of God who's basically been, screen sharing has been disabled by Don Blue. That's okay.
Oh. Here, real quick.
So former member Frank Kelly came forward and wanted to help. And so he is a video editor and video production. And so we started creating compilation videos. And he's also been helping with AI artwork. He plays around with AI. And so now in my articles, when you see pictures, that's AI artwork. And Frank has been just a wonderful, wonderful person at being able to feed into an engine artwork. And, come up, I give him a concept and he says, here are some results. And that way you can have, like, when Dave Pack was eating his own words, I said, I want to see a guy eating soup. And then when I get more than one.
Honestly, I like these a lot better than what you had before. I like it.
Yeah, well, it's stock images versus
more personable.
Yeah, well, it's also relevant too. Like, I can name something called The Elephant in the Clouds, where Dave could see, most people look up at the sky and they see clouds and see an elephant, but then he'll preach about it. So I can say, hey, Frank, send me this. So Frank Kelly has been a wonderful source of information in that way. He has done compilation videos where it's literally 8 minutes of David C. Pack talking about he is or he isn't Elijah. He talks for 6 minutes about how the series is over. And it's the most effective when you, just like the dates on my website, when you read them all together, it tells a bigger picture rather than one at a time. On my YouTube channel, there are minutes and minutes and minutes saying the series is over. The series is over. The series is over. And it becomes comical. If it wasn't, people's lives are at stake, their spiritual lives, their financial lives, their well-being is all being harmed. So it's a way to see the ridiculousness of David C. Pack and what he's doing. And when you put it in a condensed form, which I can video edit, that's my job. I don't have the time or the bandwidth to do that. Frank has been able to do that. Every once in a while, he'll say, hey, I came up with a new video. And those are some of my more popular videos because it quickly tells the story in a very succinct way. For people who watch even 30 seconds, they get it. He says it a lot. So Frank's been wonderful.
I want to thank you. I know that you have been busy with work, and I won't say the name because I don't have permission, but you are working with a former member.
Not a secret, I'm on LinkedIn.
Yeah, doing what you guys do best. You guys work together at RCG, and you guys are just doing awesome together, and you're still finding the balance with the website, which is great. There is, if you contact Mark, if you don't know about it and you're a former member, there is a Facebook page private for that. You have his website, the YouTube. I mean, there's plenty of resources, especially with former member Kevin Denny. There's just a lot out there. If you have questions, I highly recommend you just look through the information. If there's something that you cannot find, you have questions, feel free to contact. If he doesn't have the answer, there is somebody who does. I really think Jessica and some of the other people have come to talk and give their story. Those who have allowed their exit letters to be seen, I think it really does help other people. And for those, again, who are wondering, like, why in the world would these people put themselves through that? Listen, you're not in their shoes. Somebody can say that about something in your life. Just
abusive
give them grace, give them time and respect. This series is all about the education. And again, we'll be back at some point in time with more information for you. But again, thank you guys so much. Please make sure you check out their site. Make sure you follow WCTV for our shows. And thank you for everybody who's been watching. Until next time, have a great day.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.